Hi, I'm Kathryn Taylor, and welcome to a mini-series called Women Rising. We are going to learn about the entrepreneurial spirit of women in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. A powerhouse is behind these women, and it's called NLO, the Newfoundland and Labrador Organization of Women Entrepreneurs. They bring opportunities to learn, to share, to grow, and we're here at their conference 2024 to meet some of these women, to find out about their stories and what makes them tick. So please join me as we celebrate all the women entrepreneurs of Newfoundland and Labrador, Women Rising. Welcome back to Women Rising. I'd like you to meet the CEO and founder of Love Good Fats and 4 Times Better Chocolates. And she's on a mission to bring back good fats and lower that sugar. Welcome, Susie Rourke.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. You were the keynote speaker here today at the NLO conference here in St. John's, and it was a pleasure to hear your message because I've been a believer.
There we go. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. How did this all get started for you?
Well, my first startup, Susie's Good Fats, that then I changed the name to Love Good Fats, started 7 years ago. I turned 50. I read this book, Big Fat Surprise, by Nina Teicholtz. I realized that I'd been following the wrong diet for me, a low-fat diet for 20 years. I was kind of wrecked in terms of my health with blood pressure and IBS. And then I realized, I'm a marketer at heart. Someone has to get that message out in a different way than just another book. So I said, well, I'll launch a brand. So I have to call it Fats something. So I came up with Susie's Good Fats and then, did all the entrepreneur, basically my first steps as an entrepreneur. And got prototypes and got presentations and packaging and went to Whole Foods to try to get it on the shelf. And then it just snowballed from there. So that was my first startup. It really just started with an idea.
I love the fact that you said you started after you were 50. You had a wonderful career as a brand expert, and then you decided to do this. What were you thinking?
Well, I think reality, I wasn't thinking that much. I was just like, I was surrounded by startups because I worked in the natural industry after the big corporate CPG. I was consulting. And then I started saying to others, well, I think I'm going to start my own brand, and everyone was wanting to meet me, wanted to give me advice, to listen to my pitch. It was before, Dragon's Den and Shark Tank, and I was getting all these folks interested in setting up coffee. And then everyone, I met probably 200 people, and 199 said, you have to do this. So I think that was part of the belief. I don't know if I can honestly say that I really believed in myself at first, but when you walk around with a PowerPoint and you tell 200 people your story that you're going to do this, you better do it. It was kind of part of the journey, and then everything was falling into place. So then I was like, well, wait a minute, I'm doing this. It's not that I want to do it, I'm now doing it.
And I know we say that you're an inspiration to all of us here in Newfoundland, and speaking to us this morning about your story. It's easy to say it is an inspiration, but when you walk the walk and we can see what you have done and what you have accomplished, it is encouraging to all of those women out there who are thinking about this.
Yeah, take that first step.
Mm-hmm.
Take that first step.
Take that first step. Now, Susie, when you had this idea and you had read this book, The Big Fat Surprise, and Nina became a bit of maybe a mentor to you.
Yep.
How did you feel the message was, we were ready for this message? Because we surely were not doing anything right.
This was 2017 and we weren't ready. The Banting diet, and they had been around for 20 years in South Africa and the UK. Keto diet has been around for 80 years to treat, back then, was children epilepsy. So we weren't ready for the message, but it took Nina's book and 9 years of research with every single piece of science to be strong enough to overcome the naysayers. There's some powerful anti-fats voices in the regulatory industries that want to continue supporting the pyramids and the diets. And this is, a different message saying we don't really need that many carbohydrates. We certainly don't need evil sugar. Evil sugar is the root cause of that one flawed study. So she had to go pretty heavy duty in terms of the science. And even then, we know that it's been 6-7 years of, World War III of nutrition, where there's different philosophies, and the FDA keeps, digging in with not just fully embracing keto or low carb diets, but the obesity groups and diabetes obviously now finally embrace it.
Well, I mean, we're seeing it grow. It's not diminishing. We're still seeing it. We're seeing it in children with, the outbreak of diabetes and obesity. And everyone is saying, well, what are we doing wrong? What don't we understand? But the food industry, they're so powerful.
They're so powerful, the food and ingredients. And since, in 2016, when she wrote the book, there wasn't that many clinicals. And then this book basically spurred, I think there's 200 clinicals. The Virtua Health study did a 2-year reversal of diabetes study. So now that's hailed across the world as the model for a double-blind clinical study that shows that, yes, indeed, you can reverse diabetes with a keto study. Now there's Alzheimer's studies, which is diabetes 3, really. Now that we know inflammation, metabolic diseases, all can be significantly improve, obviously cancer, with cutting out sugar and following a diet that's closer to reducing the carbs and having the right type of good fats.
And we have the answers. I mean,
we have the answers. We have the answers.
And people are going in circles, and it's so frustrating. And then back to you and your products. You had the idea, but in what form at that point? It was an idea. How did you get it into, for example, something like this that I can hold?
Well, the first idea with Love Good Fats, I wanted to get into bars, because bars is, $2.49, $2.99 for a little bar. So you can get a lot of trial. And the idea was, let's try to get trial. Everybody and their brother and their sister and their cousin launch a bar, Betty's blueberry bars and whatnot, because there's less barriers to entry on a bar. But then again, there's a very high fail rate because it's kind of easy to do a bar. It was really hard to do Susie's Good Fats, Love Good Fats, because they were full of fats, which never had done before, and no sugar, so there's no binding agents. So you just have, flat, a little bit of protein and fiber, but nothing holds it all together. So it was really, 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 really hard to get the product. But once I got the first couple of prototypes and we started production, we got better and better. For my second startup, it's around a better chocolate, and I chose to go into little portion size chocolates because chocolate can stay in a nice little piece of chocolate. So I kind of went with the piece of chocolate in boxes and jars and soon in pouches.
Yeah, and the thing is, we all love chocolate, but to find a healthy chocolate that's not giving us that dose of sugar and spiking our insulin. But you had failures along the way. You kind of alluded to them about the difficulty in processing it. But what was one of the biggest challenges you faced, perhaps?
Well, I've had two massive challenges. They're somewhat related. With Love Good Fats, Susie's Good Fats, the first production was a massive failure. So even though we had wins in the prototypes and the kitchen samples and the pilot samples, so the smaller pilot, and then we waited 4 months, we ordered the packaging from overseas, we were all ready to go. But then during the actual full up production at the larger machines couldn't replicate what the smaller little kitchen samples had. You have to get the temperature and to get the consistency right because you don't have binding agents. So it's really delicate. So I wound up going home, a Saturday night with an empty van with no chocolates for my samples. And in my second startup, FourX Better Chocolate, I chose to do a partnership with two brothers from Ecuador because they had the factory and I had the brand building experience. So we were blending the expertise of both. However, the reality is partnerships are difficult, like every advisor will say, and we weren't really fit. They didn't want to keep building the brand the way I wanted to build the brand, and the costs were going up. So we weren't delivering on our commitments So we parted ways. So then I had to start over and find another factory and kind of, we had some ingredients that we can't get out of Ecuador and stuff. So, so it's basically you have to start over. When you have a good idea and you have this DNA that you're going to solve problems, you're going to get through it, you're going to find a way, you have the right network, just keep at it. And sometimes you have a little bit of luck going your way. In my case, the failures have always led to a better place. Always, always, always. So even when I'm in the thick of it and I'm pretty down or I'm crying or I'm having a hard day or I'm having a hard week, every single time in my life, and I've had a lot of personal challenges, every single time, it seems to have happened for a reason. So just trust your gut, follow through with it, and good things happen to good people.
Well, I think there were 3 pieces of advice you gave to the women this morning. It was no success without failure, trust your inner gut, and be inspired. And you've lived by that, really.
I try to.
Yeah. And when you pick yourself up again and you continued on, you did not give up. How far were you into the journey before you began to see? Was it a couple of years?
Well, so overall, like I've had a lot of small trip ups. I've had 2 kind of bigger challenges, and then you're in the food business, so there's quality issues, there's running out of money. That's happened several times. So there's probably 20 instances of, I think this is the end, like, my goodness, right? Like, wow, like we have these deadlines. I've counted days on deadlines and had the calendar and even texting my brother daily with the countdowns of doomsday. And I think in every instances, you kind of have to use that really tense, scary fear energy to kind of like, okay, like how am I going to turn this into making the right decisions today? And I think one thing I do really well is make sure that I have the right steps today to make the right decisions tomorrow. Because you can't just make the best decision on a day. You need a sequence of foundational stuff to come your way. So I think you kind of have to do both, like, okay, what am I doing today? Which for me includes exercise and the right connections. But if I know in 30 days and 60 and 90, there's key milestones, don't forget to work on those so that you have what you need to be ready.
Great advice. And you've also wanted to be a role model through all of this as well. And you brought that to the table.
I tried to a little bit, my first 20, 25 years, I was just a marketer. I started as an assistant marketing manager and I was on adult diapers. So I was actually trying the diapers, and then I was on baby diapers, and then I was, on chips and Heinz ketchup. So I did that, and that was a really good career in Toronto. And then, I always kind of had in my gut, like, when I'm 50, I'll give back. But then I'm like hitting mid-40s, my health has issues. Mortgage is nowhere close to being paid, single mom, have the kids. So I'm coming close to 50. I was like, oh, I still have to work for a little while. But with my first startup at age 50, as soon as I kind of had just enough time to breathe, 8 months in, I started giving back to the LGBT in Toronto. So we sponsored, that first summer, sponsored the first, the Pride and Remembrance Run with just a little donation. Then the second summer, we had a whole team and we had t-shirts and we sponsored sign-ups and gave donation. And then the third year to the LGBT community across Canada, I went to Loblaws and Walmart and all the large banners and the natural banners. And I said, support Love is Love in your stores, and we'll give $1 to the LGBT charity Rainbow Railroad. And we wind up giving $50,000 that summer, and it was the COVID summer too.
Wow, beautiful. Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about the successes. We've talked about the challenges along the way, but how did it feel when you stepped into the power of seeing it happen?
Well, I think part of it, I'm a little bit on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum. So sometimes, my daughter kind of reminds me that I don't kind of see everything that everyone else sees. So definitely a disconnect in the sense of, seeing how big that I was able to make Love Good Fats and kind of really taking in that success. Partially also because you're still kind of drowning in what's next. Like many successful companies, you turn the corner, and then, there's new issues to solve. However, Love Good Fats, exceeded $100 million of revenue in just 36 months. So we smashed all Canadian records in terms of fast growth for a Canadian food startup, a food and snack startup. So I wind up getting a lot of awards and a lot of interviews and a lot of accolades. So that's always a good little thing, because usually you go to these events and you might be fighting another battle, and it's definitely an injection of getting recognized as an injection of energy. You also meet a lot of really cool people that kind of wind up changing the path you're on often. So it all kind of happens really well. So definitely been a big part of the last 5 years has been to celebrate also and let it soak in.
And I think that's an important part with any entrepreneur, to not be so busy that you don't take that moment to say, look what I have done. Look where I have come.
You have to have, that's part of the resiliency. You have to have that healthy balance of really being open to the failures and to what you did wrong and what you can do differently, and not letting the ego get in the way. In the larger companies, often the biggest egos could wind up being in bigger roles, and that helps protect you maybe. However, part of success, especially when you're on your own, you're an entrepreneur, you have to be able to kind of really separate out, what could I have done differently? What did I learn? What does this mean? What do I do now? But then, really kind of celebrate and soak in the wins. This worked out really well because of this and that. And find your own self-help tips to motivate yourself. I have to go for runs. I have to do my yoga. I'm more a little bit introvert for my source of energy. So, don't put me in parties 5 nights a week. I just get implode. So you have to figure out what works for you, because you constantly have to re-energize.
And you being a triathlete and wanting to be concerned about your health has to have helped sustain you through all of this, up and down.
The physical, I've done Ironman triathlons, and I've done 11 while I was working, while I was a single mom, while I was climbing the corporate ladder. And, at that time, I didn't really think about it, but I had the parallel tracks. So that, I have, one child, my daughter, and then my son, and then I have my career, which, you have to pay bills and you kind of feel a lot of the financial pressure. And then I have my outlet with triathlons, but it all kind of works together. It got me the more goals I have, the more I deliver. It made sure that I stayed focused on my health. And I really, really enjoy the triathlon lifestyle. My kids really love coming to the races. We nearly went to Hawaii together. I was really close to going back again. So, you have to do kind of what works. Women, we often find it's hard to juggle everything. But you find the busiest women out there, they're ones who juggle the most.
I think you're right. Yeah. If they always say, find a busy person if you want something done.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Now, when you were speaking to the women this morning, you mentioned that continuous innovation was something that was always on your mind.
Yeah, critical. Yeah. There's no room for, especially I'm in consumer packaged goods, so foods and snacks and drinks, there's no room for idling. If you're not pushing the innovation one way or the other, innovate or die, your competition will. It's very, very, very aggressive out on the shelves. It's very expensive. If you're snoozing and you're like, okay, now I'm okay for 3 years, that's not going to work. The consumer's demanding more. The retailers are demanding more. You have competition who's thinking about great things. You have to be top of your game. Like, the industry demands it. And we have the benefit, like, we're scrappy entrepreneurs. We think about our brand all day long. We think about consumers all day long. We interact with them. We're not like a tower head office somewhere with lots of processes. Like, we're there, we're in the stores, we're in the shows. So many of us come up with the next big thing. We just have a lot of barriers to get them on the shelf and to stay on the shelf.
Do you feel part of a community, or do you feel
for sure.
alone?
The community of startups, you know, when I started in 2017, there was a handful of brands that you can name that broke through the ceiling, you know, the Vegas of the world, and then RX Bar came up. But there was literally a handful of brands here and there that went from the founder hacking away at it for 10 years to like, oh, wait a minute, now there's an injection of money and even there's a sale. Now, you know, Dragon's Den, Shark Tanks, L'Œil du Dragon, now there's a lot of focus on supporting entrepreneurs that have ideas. So the world has changed. And there's a community. There's investors, there's VCs, there's TV shows, there's incubation hubs, there's funding, still all very hard. And I even started little founders helping founders, informal, nothing to sign up on, nothing like NLAW, but really just a little network that if you're in your consumer packaged goods, join us, and there's a lot of sharing.
Yeah, and
it's lonely. It can be lonely to be. Yeah,
I'm sure it can be, and particularly when you say there is a group out there doing it, but they're all wanting to do what you do as well. So it's that feeling of how am I friends and how do I keep ahead? And
it's shocking, you know. In my founders group, you know, there's 5 of us that are in chocolate, and you know, we're in the end trying to kind of get the same share of stomach, share a wallet. But in the natural space, you know, it's one big community. You fight hard, you play hard, but it's still one community. You know, one of the companies I was in before I exited, there's probably 6 or 7 founders that came out of that one company. And we're all, you know, in spaces that you can say there's some overlap. And you know, that's just kind of how it goes. But there's a very high respect that, you know, you don't just give your competitor your company secrets, but it's a very different dynamic. You know, we're all first and foremost founders, and it's a tough journey. It's a lonely journey, and we understand each other. So there's more sharing than in any other industry, I think, in terms of that part of it.
And it's nice to see. And there's certainly sharing here at the Newfoundland and Labrador Organization of Entrepreneurs Conference.
There is.
Delightful to have you here with your messages. And if you were to leave the women here with a message, what would that be?
So the main message is, if you haven't started your idea, and you may not be here if you haven't started yet, but some of you might have just kind of signed up and joined some groups and kind of buying some different things, but not quite jumped in, jump in. Definitely, if you have an idea and you want to start your store, your product, jump in. Once you're in, because then it starts happening. You know, that first step is really, really the toughest step. And it's where, like, some people can go like 5-10 years and just take that first step, and then it starts unfolding. Once you have your brand, there'll be some ups and downs. If you don't have some downs and some tough times, like something's wrong, like something's going on. Like a startup and an entrepreneurial course is tough. You know, I was whining to my daughter last month, and she's like, "Mom, you know, you're an entrepreneur. This is the path you have. Of course, there's going to be all these problems to solve. Of course, you're going to be doing things that you don't want to do, or, you know, there'll be issues. You're the one to solve them. So just keep at it. Keep at it. And if you follow your gut and you have the right support, us women are incredible. You'll find a way, even when it seems impossible. You'll find a way."
I love that. You'll find a way, even when it seems impossible. What a great thought. But I do have to say, this is your first time to Newfoundland and Labrador.
It is so overdue. I'm coming back.
Oh, good. And are we living up to our reputation of warmth and friendliness?
It's incredible. I swear, at the gate, the energy at B36 gate in Toronto was different. I was in disbelief. It's very, very, very special. So I'm looking forward to coming back and coming to Fobo Island, and
and bringing your chocolates with you.
Bringing my chocolates and hopefully my kids.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to sit with me and to share those thoughts. And I wish you all the best in the future. And I hope that you have inspired our women. We are women rising. And we are rising above everything and bringing everyone else with us to be all that we can be.
Follow me, and my chocolates are at Costco.ca, and they're pretty easy to find there. FourX Better Chocolate. So thank you.
Sounds delicious. Thank you, Susie.
Thanks.
It's no surprise that I'm passionate about the topic today with Susie Rourke. I have often thought about the use of sugar and fat in our diets and ways to improve my own health and the health of my family. And it was funny because she was inspired by Nina Teicholtz. And this book, when I went thinking I'll have to order it, was actually in the library at home. We had it, I had forgotten about it, and it brought me back to reviewing the whole role of fat in the diet. And to be able to sit down with someone who has taken that concept and made it into such an incredible business for the benefit of her family and her career, but also of the people where the food lands. And that's what it's all about. So I hope you can take a message away today from the show that will make you more thoughtful about what you eat, but also more thoughtful about the entrepreneurs of Newfoundland and Labrador. These women are bringing ideas to the table, creating businesses, and they are brave women to be doing it. It's not an easy climate, and we're so pleased to bring you their stories. So please join me again on Women Rising.